Let me read you the headlines of some things that happened just this week. In San Diego, a man was arrested for taking a 2-year-old into an elephant exhibit at the zoo. In Acadia National Park in Maine, they found the bodies of 2 hikers. In Boston, an Uber driver was charged with kidnapping and allegedly trapping the woman inside his car. Okay, so why am I reading this and what am I going to be talking about today? I'm going to be talking about real life stories and how you can use those to write your novel or to inspire you to come up with ideas for the novel that you're writing. Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte, a women's fiction author. And so we're going to get right to it now. The way I'm about ready to go take my dogs for a walk in the orange groves. I was going to actually film the video there, but I decided I just better do it before I leave. So this is why I am dressed this way. So let's talk about how real life inspires us to write our stories. There are things that are happening around us all the time. News stories are one places to get ideas. So many authors do this. There'll be some idea, some news that happens somewhere, and that inspires them to create something. Now it depends on the kind of writer that you are, right? So I probably wouldn't write about any of those that I wrote about. But if I was a suspense author, for example, maybe finding two hikers in a national park might be something that I might want to explore and find out a little bit more about what happened. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to write exactly what happened. Typically, writers don't do that. They just use the events that they hear about as inspiration to create something else, right? To write something else, a different type of scene that is similar, or maybe the way that the police or the FBI, whoever investigates, gives the writer some information about how law enforcement works and how they investigate situations like this. So even though I wouldn't write this, there might be other authors that would, and there might be other types of stories that I could use as inspiration for my novel. So that's one place, right, is to find that. Now, when I was writing That Was Then, I had a point. So if you haven't read the book it takes place in a very small town, very similar to mine. So where I live now in this house, it used to be covered with orange groves. So we had tons and tons and tons of orange groves up and down the hills, the mountains, all around here. I mean, there were no homes, right? So as time went on, and the developers started to buy up the land of the orange. It just wasn't profitable, right, to continue to grow the orange groves, the oranges. They sold to developers. Developers built communities, and now where I live, there are very, very few orange groves. In fact, before, just around my house, just behind my house, there was still an orange grove. And probably, I would say, it's probably been like 10 years now. It was taken down. And waiting actually for some developer to come and buy up that lot. There's actually nothing there but dirt now, but most of the places here now have homes. So a few years ago when I was writing That Was Then, I needed some kind of catastrophe for my hero. So I had a heroine who, the hero of the story, they were high school sweethearts. She and the hero were high school sweethearts. And he left. It was this a second chance at love kind of story. And he left to pursue his dreams and came back at one point to see her to his hometown. They had a brief affair. She ended up pregnant, and then he left again. At that point, he asked her to go with him. She said no, so he left. And so he has a daughter he doesn't know anything about. So as the story is pretty close to the opening, she finds out that she has been re-diagnosed with cancer, and her daughter knows that her father is out there somewhere, and decides to contact him, thinking that this might be a remedy that her mother, love can heal where maybe medicine can't. And so she's hoping that if she contacts him and brings him back, that love will reignite and it'll help her mother heal. So she and the daughter is I think 17 at that point. And so anyhow, he has kind of a lot to prove, and I felt that he needed to make a major gesture, and I wasn't really sure what it was going to be. So when I first started writing, so back to real life. So in real life, we because this was all orange groves, when we have rains, and sometimes the rains can be kind of heavy, we go through years of droughts, and then we have years where we have a lot of rain. And so it used to be just absorbed into the ground because the orange groves were here and it was all dirt. And the way that in the place where I live, there's it's sort of a hill. There's a small incline, and it goes down to a riverbed that's typically dry. There's no water in there. But when it rains now, instead of being absorbed into the ground and then some trickling down into the riverbed, what happens is the water, because of all the concrete and the streets, it just rushes downhill, and tends to flood. And we have an older community that was here way before any of these homes were here, and it used to be where people that worked in the orange groves lived. And that year, and I can't remember what year it was, but it's been probably about 6 or 7 years. They had a huge flood, and just the water just rushed down so fast that it ended up going into this village and into these homes. And it was right before Christmas. It was tragic. It was just people, they had to take their stuff out. I don't think anybody was hurt, but this inspired me to use this event. And I thought, okay, this is what's going to happen, right? In my stories, we're going to have this, and it's going to be, people are going to be evacuated. And this really did happen. People were evacuated. It was closed down for a while until they cleaned up because there was mud and all kinds of other stuff. So I thought, this is what's going to happen. And my hero is going to be there. He's going to save his daughter from the rushing water. And as he gets everybody out and everybody is safe, he gets trapped and carried away by the water. Now, so I use the event in my story because I thought this is perfect. First of all, the town, even though it's a fictional town, the reason I fictionalize it rather than using my real town is because it's fiction. And I wanted to be able to create any other kind of fiction that I wanted. So if I wanted to change the streets, or I wanted to put a store where it wasn't, I wanted to have the freedom to do that. So I just fictionalized the town, but based it pretty much on where I live and our community of the orange groves. So sometimes we can use things, right? We can use real events, and if they fit into our story, we can modify it so that it does fit into our story as well. It doesn't have to be, again, this is fiction. We can be inspired, and inspiration is just inspiration, right? It's just gives us ideas. It doesn't mean that we're going to write the exact same thing. So that's one place where we can get ideas, right? Is just looking at the news, and avoid the headline news, right? Avoid the page one of whatever pops up on YouTube or all of the things that are wherever it is you get your news. You want to avoid that because most of that's just national news, and it's all the same type of news. It doesn't matter if you're looking at like Yahoo News or you're looking at Google News or wherever. It's all going to be sort of national, international, political, whatever's going on, right? And you want to dig deeper than that. So you want to go to maybe the secondary or the third stories and see what else is happening that people aren't really talking about. That you're like, oh my God, this happened here, right? How can I use this? Another place to get ideas is by people watching. So one of my favorite things to do is to go write in a coffee shop for many reasons. It just focuses me and allows me to really work on my writing. But it's also a great place to watch people and to overhear things, intentionally, not intentionally, of what people are saying. And sometimes just it may be a piece of dialogue. It may be any little thing that catches your ear, right? And you're like, wow, okay, that was an interesting way of saying something. And it could spark an idea. One time when I was sitting at Panera Bread, I heard this guy, he was talking to a friend about his marriage, and it was tragic. It was he was talking about how his wife just didn't love him, and he'd married her, and he thought that she was using him, and it was just all the things that he was saying that she was doing. It was really sad, And so it stopped me, where I was writing, I was working, and I just overhearing that. And he wasn't quiet either; he was pretty loud. So yeah, I could not overhear him, and I didn't use that for anything because it just doesn't fit into anything that I wanted to write, and it's not any kind of hook that I think I would ever use. You never know, maybe for a villain or something, I don't know. But it was interesting, right? It stopped me from what I was doing in order to overhear that. So sometimes just being aware, like one of the things I think writers have to do is you have to be good observers. You have to observe how people say things, how people do things, and because that's how you learn, and that's how you write realistic characters as well. So one of the things is just kind of listening to what people are saying around you, and keeping a notepad and writing things down. And then kind of connected to that is just your own life, your own real life, right? So things happen that both with like immediate family and friends, but also just around you. Like we had a teacher that was arrested at the high school my kids went to for having sex with children, with the students, right? She ended up going to jail, and it was kind of a big thing. So things like that happen that may inspire something that you want to write about. We also, again, tragically had very close to us, like less than 10 miles from where I live, a terrorist attack in 2015. And I actually was leaving college. I stopped again at Panera Bread, this time not to write. I was just going to get a cup of coffee and a bagel probably and head down to the other college I was working at. And it was within blocks of where this attack happened. So I got off on the on-ramp, and the Panera Bread was closed, and they were telling everybody to leave the area. And I was like, what's going on? So again, just kind of seeing what kind of things happen around your neighborhood, around where you live, and it does not have to be crazy and tragic either, just normal stuff that happen. As people live their normal lives, things happen that are, that could be used as inspiration for a scene or for something that happens in your book. So again, it goes along with being aware and being observant and just paying attention to life and things that happen, right? So that you can be aware when you're writing, and it gives you ideas. And again, part of being creative is not copying the exact event. It's just of using that as inspiration to write something similar that you want to write about. So other places to get ideas. So we have our own life, we have sort of people watching, we have the news. And the other place to get ideas is actually from inside of us. So if we kind of go back and understand ourselves and our lives, a lot of my books, most of my books have to do with identity, of being able to connect to your own identity. So why do I write these books? Well, being a Latina living in the United States, one of the things that always kind of was in my mind, right, is like you don't really fit into this group, right? You don't really fit into the Latino group. You don't really fit into the mainstream American group. So like, where is it that I fit in? What is my identity? Who am I? How do I figure things out? Right? So that kind of consumed my thinking for a long time. So many of my books have to do with that topic, where my main character is searching for her identity in some way. And so where does that inspiration come? It just comes from inside of me, of kind of analyzing who I am, what are issues that I am dealing with, that I'm working with, that I can use to write my story, to give my story a theme, and to probably meditative, right? Just to kind of deal with my, that theme and those ideas myself, and come to understand that better. So what do we do then? How do I and how do other writers take these ideas and eventually use them in books? Well, one of the things I suggest is creating a file on your computer and just putting like story ideas down, keeping a notepad and writing things down, because eventually when you're writing and you're thinking of something, you can go through and you can look at that idea file and say, you know what, this thing that happened here, I remember that would fit really perfect in this scene. And you can add that to to your, to your novel as you're writing. So having that idea file and using those there. Now, most of those you probably won't use. Like I would never probably end up using that that overheard conversation at Panera Bread. Again, it isn't something that I'm typically interested in writing about. Usually I write love stories, not marriages that are being that are not going well. But you never know. Like you never know. It's just there, and then at some point, I can go back into my idea file and say, oh, wow, yeah, this is going to work. So having that idea file there is helpful because you can go back and search through it and find things when your brain isn't working. So you're like, I have no idea what I'm going to write here. Well, let's take a look at the idea file. Well, yeah, this, I remember that. This will work. This will be good. So really the secret to using the real world as inspiration is just to stay aware and stay observant of things. Pay attention to what's going on, keep notes of what's happening, of what you see, of what you observe, and then and save them so that you can use them at a different time. Okay, I hope that this has been helpful. If you liked this video, please like the video and share it with someone. So I'll see you next time. Now I'm going to go out and take my doggies for a walk before the rain starts.